Next week, Family Research Council and the Regent University School of Government will host a Pray Vote Stand town hall on the rise of the term Christian nationalism. Where did it come from and why is it being used? That town hall will be broadcast live from Cornerstone Chapel in Leesburg, Virginia. And for information on that, you can text the word town hall to 67742 to find out more. But here with me now to give you an idea of some of the things we'll be discussing next week at the Town Hall Forum on Christian Nationalism is David Closson, the Director of Biblical Worldview here at the Family Research Council. David, good to see you today.
Hey, good to see you and good to be with you, Joseph.
Well, first, in order to have this conversation about Christian nationalism, we kind of need to define what we're talking about. But I'm not going to ask you to do that. I'm going to ask you to respond to someone else's definition. Let's go ahead and play clip 5.
Christian nationalism is basically like this belief, right, that like America is a nation by and for Christians, and that it's like in need of saving from like satanic forces.
Now, David Closson, that was Christopher Matthias defining his understanding of Christian nationalism. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, that's an interesting definition, Joseph, and I think the fact that he has that definition, and if you were to ask that question to somebody else, that you'd probably get a different definition. I think it points to the fact that there really is no agreed upon definition of Christian nationalism. Now, I think it's, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, in this conversation on why this term is cropped up, what the agenda behind it is. But I think it's fair to say, when you study the issue, when you think about Christian nationalism, Christian nationalism, to the best of my ability to discern where it actually exists, is really where someone kind of conflates their American identity with their Christian identity. And so I think we did see this, like you said, Joseph, emerge kind of around January 6th, but it was used even before that, really to refer to folks who maybe would give America kind of this transcendent meaning in redemptive history. And so I think that we can talk about it, and I will talk more about it at the town hall. But I think yes, nationalism, I've always understood it kind of equating to patriotism, but clearly those who are talking about Christian nationalism with this kind of urgency and acting really scared about it, they're trying to do something in our political discourse.
Now, Christopher Matthias is a reporter with Huffington Post. He also said this. Let's go ahead and play clip 1.
At its core, it is like explicitly anti-democratic. Does not believe in pluralism, does not believe in democracy. It believes in dominion and domination and a kind of, a government run by their very particular interpretation of Scripture.
Now, David Closson, when I hear that definition, I get concerned as well. You're a Christian, I'm a Christian. We spend time with Christians. How many people do you know that actually share the definition of who would subscribe to Christian nationalism as it's defined there?
Well, yeah, as it was defined there, Joseph, I'd be scared to death of that as well. But just yesterday, I was with FRC President Tony Perkins. We were at a pastors' conference in Kentucky at the Ark Encounter, which was built by Ken Ham. There was 1,100 pastors there. I don't think there'd be a single pastor in that room, Joseph, that would say that describes their view of the relationship between their faith and politics. And so I think it's important to realize, and Joseph, let me add this, it's important to realize we're hearing all this talk about Christian nationalism and the Christian right, the religious right. You hear the term theocracy thrown around as well kind of in this conversation. These conversations, I've noticed a trend. I've been around enough election cycles to, we're only a month out from the midterm elections, and that's where you start hearing this theocracy language, this Christian nationalism language. Not saying that there are a few people that have those ideas, but it does seem to be used and weaponized around election time with this idea to motivate the left's base, to kind of scare them, and to kind of marginalize Christians who don't want to be painted with that really scary Christian nationalism label.
Yeah. David, it is true that there are people who are Christians who do want to see the American government, and frankly, all governments, govern in a way that is consistent with God's truth as revealed in Scripture. And that, in many cases, is labeled as Christian nationalism. But I want to quote a couple other people that Americans might think favorably. They happened to start this country, one of whom was named John Adams. And he said that our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. That might be labeled as Christian nationalism. George Washington, some people will remember or recognize that name. He said, "It is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, to be grateful for his benefits, and humbly to implore his protection and favor." Now, it's my belief that if an American politician today said those words, there would be outrage in response. Were the founding fathers Christian nationalists?
Yeah, and another person to quote, Joseph, would be Thomas Jefferson. A lot of folks will, they know his phrase "separation of church and state," and that's been, weaponized by secularists in the ACLU. But when Jefferson actually wrote that in 1800, he was writing to the Danbury Baptist Association, and what he meant by that was that there should be a separation to protect the church, the institutional church, from the institution of the government. My goodness, by no means did he mean that religion shouldn't have, and the Christian faith shouldn't influence and compel people with their beliefs. And so you're absolutely right. If folks that founded this country would be painted as Christian nationalists, Doug Mastriano, who's running for governor of Pennsylvania, he was on the show on Washington Watch a couple of days ago. He's called for 40 days of prayer and fasting in the lead up to the midterm election. And he was immediately smeared as someone who's trying to impose theocracy, and that's really scary. My goodness, Abraham Lincoln, Roosevelt, and others have all, that's something common in our heritage, is calling for days of prayer and fasting. And so I think one thing we need to point out, Joseph, that I think is helpful in this conversation is that this type of language of prayer and fasting and invoking God, this is part of our culture. This is part of the heritage of this nation. And for those who want to say that this is something sinister or devious or that's undermining pluralism, it just shows they're actually historically illiterate. And really, that's not at all what motivates faithful Christians engaging in the public square.
I also think there's some irony in the fact that it is John Adams and George Washington and people who were overtly Christian. Not every founder was overtly evangelical Christian, but many of them were what we would describe that way. They were the ones who created this pluralistic, tolerant society that we now celebrate because of its religious diversity. And there's this concern that the Christians are the threat to religious diversity, when ironically, it is a Christian set of values, a Christian group of founders who established the environment where religious diversity could exist. But David, in about 30 seconds, what's the difference between just good old public engagement on behalf of a Christian and Christian nationalism?
Yeah, I think a line is crossed from patriotism and what we would, just nationalism. A line is crossed into this Christian nationalism when one puts politics in the place of ultimacy. So if someone views politics and their candidate and their campaign as ultimate, as the most important thing that just displaces everything in their life, I do think that's a red flag that your allegiance to the Lord has been supplanted by something else. And that is something that those of us who engage in politics need to beware of.
Amen. David Closson, thanks for your time as always.
Thank you, Joseph.